Today, we're diving into one of the most incredible market shifts we've seen in a long, long time. The absolute explosion of Chinese cars in Russia. But is this boom a once-in-a-lifetime golden opportunity, or is it a carefully laid geopolitical trap? Let's get into it. Take a good look at this number, 48.2%. That is the colossal slice of the Russian car market that Chinese automakers grabbed in just 2 years. I mean, they went from almost nothing to basically half the market. So how on earth did this happen so fast? And more importantly, why is this golden opportunity now in serious danger of vanishing? That's a story we're going to unpack. All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll look at what the market was like before 2022. Then, we'll cover the mass exodus of all the big global brands. After that, we'll dive into China's jaw-dropping rise, analyze Russia's latest protectionist moves, and finally, explore the huge choice these companies are facing right now. Okay, so to really get the scale of this change, we've got to rewind the clock a bit. What did the Russian car market actually look like before the conflict turned everything upside down? You know, back in 2021, the market was basically a fortress for the global giants. You had the Korean powerhouses, Kia and Hyundai, everywhere. You had France's Renault, which was so integrated it actually controlled Russia's own homegrown brand, Lada. And of course, you had Japan's Toyota. This wasn't some backwater market. It was deeply plugged into Western and Asian tech and supply chains. So where were the Chinese brands in this picture? Well, they were barely in the picture at all. A combined market share of just over 7%. I mean, that's practically a rounding error. They were on the margins, filling in little gaps here and there. They were an afterthought, not real competitors. And then, 2022 happened. And geopolitics didn't just shake things up, it triggered a full-blown retreat, creating a market vacuum unlike anything we've seen in decades. As sanctions hit, it was like a domino effect that just paralyzed the entire industry. International brands packed up and left. That severed the supply of absolutely critical parts. Engines, electronics, you name it. Factories were shut down, sold off for like $1. And the result? A staggering 67% crash in Russia's domestic car production. It was a brutal wake-up call that showed just how dependent Russia's auto industry had become on foreign technology. This complete collapse created the perfect opening. With all their major rivals gone, Chinese automakers didn't just step in to fill the void. They staged a complete takeover. And the speed of it is, well, it's just hard to wrap your head around. Just look at this chart. It's an absolute rocket ship. From under 20% in 2022, China's share just skyrockets to nearly 50% by 2024. Think about that for a second. In less than 2 years, almost 1 out of every 2 new cars sold in Russia was Chinese. That's a total realignment of an entire market. So, just to refresh your memory, here's the before picture. Lada at the top, followed by a who's who of global auto giants. Keep those names in your head. And this is the after. It's a completely different universe. Lada's still there, sure. But look at the rest of the board. It's a clean sweep for China. Haval, Chery, Geely, Changan, they didn't just gain market share. They completely replaced the old guard. This wasn't a shift. It was a substitution. So how'd they do it so effectively? Well, different companies had different playbooks. Chery, for instance, just flooded the market with multiple brands at different price points. Geely had this really clever workaround, using its factory in neighboring Belarus as a supply hub. But, you know, maybe the most strategic player of all was Great Wall Motor. They had the foresight to build a full-scale factory in Russia before the conflict, which gave them a massive head start. But this is where the story takes a really sharp turn. Just as Chinese brands were popping the champagne, Russia started to change the rules of the game, pulling out this kind of double-edged sword of protectionism. So the Kremlin's main weapon is this thing called the recycling tax. Now on paper, it sounds harmless enough, right? A fee to cover recycling a car at the end of its life. But in reality, it's a powerful strategic tool. See, here's the trick. If you build your cars in Russia, you get the tax refunded. If you import them, you pay the whole thing. It's a system with one very clear goal: force companies to build their factories on Russian soil. And we've already seen this playbook used with ruthless efficiency on commercial trucks. It was this deliberate 3-step combination punch. First, the financial squeeze. Bam! Huge tax hikes. Then, technical barriers. Bam! Super long and expensive local testing. And finally, the knockout blow. Suspending certifications for major Chinese brands, effectively banning their sales overnight. And this quote, this gets to the absolute core of Russia's strategy. This isn't just about protecting a local company. The ultimate goal here is technology and industrial transfer. Russia wants the factories, they want the tech, they want the jobs, they want the ability to build the cars themselves, not just be a customer for China. Now, for passenger cars, the approach isn't a sudden knockout. It's more of a gradual squeeze. Russia isn't banning Chinese cars. Instead, it's just methodically turning the screws, hiking that recycling tax bit by bit to make importing cars less and less profitable. It's a slow push towards one conclusion. Either you build here or you're going to get squeezed out of the market. And this brings us to the final act. This pressure campaign from Russia has created a really high-stakes dilemma for every single Chinese automaker that's been cashing in on this boom. So they're basically left with two paths forward, and neither one is a walk in the park. Path one, they can stick to the export model. It's low risk financially, sure, but it means getting hammered by those taxes and always living under the threat of a ban. Path two, go all in, build massive factories in Russia. That solves the tax problem, but it also means sinking billions of dollars into a highly volatile country where your assets could be frozen or seized overnight. You know, this whole experience in Russia has taught some pretty tough lessons. First, you've got to stay on your toes and navigate Russia's constantly changing rules. Second, that decision to build local factories, it's a massive gamble. Huge potential reward, but also devastating risk. But maybe the biggest lesson of all is the urgent need to diversify. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Relying this heavily on one unpredictable partner isn't a strategy. It's a liability. Which brings us right back to that big question we started with. For Chinese automakers, was the Russian market a golden goose that just laid a few temporary golden eggs? Or was it a geopolitical trap all along, where the real price of admission is a long-term, high-risk commitment? The choices these companies make in the coming months are going to tell us the answer. Thanks for watching.